The Bulwark published a piece recently arguing that Democrats should shun progressive influencers, specifically targeting Hassan Piker as someone who should be barred from the Democratic coalition. They also published a broader piece calling the rise of political influencers an infestation of politics. An infestation, like cockroaches or bedbugs, or voters that they just don't personally approve of. And I want to talk about this, but I need to be upfront about where I sit because it's important. Look, the Ring of Fire, we've been doing this for 20 plus years, and we've stayed small on purpose. We're not a big organization like the Bulwark, but we're also not a 25-year-old with a ring light that learned about politics from a podcast. We exist somewhere in between, which means I can see both sides of this in a way that most people can't. And I'm telling you right now, the Bulwark is flat out wrong. Not about everything. They're generally a great outlet, but they are certainly wrong about this. And I want to talk about the Bulwark's background real quick because it was started by Charlie Sykes and Tim Miller, among others. And Tim Miller, he's genuinely talented and he writes well. He's great on stage. And yes, he's objectively attractive. I mean, really objectively attractive. And I would absolutely watch a show where Tim Miller argues politics with anyone, including a wall. And that guy, he worked on Jeb Bush's campaign. Jeb Bush, the man whose entire 2016 campaign consisted of standing patiently at a podium while Donald Trump made fun of him. And he just sat there and waited for it to stop. Tim Miller's the one that helped run that operation. And he's the one that is telling progressive influencers that they're a problem for the Democratic coalition. This is dietary advice from the guy who invented the meal that gave you food poisoning. And the Bulwark piece on Hassan Piker specifically, and I want to be clear, he's got opinions I don't always agree with. He's got some takes that have been flat out wrong. And I'm not an uncritical defender of anyone, especially him. But the Bulwark piece attributes positions to him using framing so inflammatory that it needs its own disclaimer. It implies that he's drawn to Hamas assaulters, and that's partially the phrase they used. I just had to clean up a word that wouldn't play well on YouTube, but you can see where I'm going with that. Hassan's condemned Hamas repeatedly on camera. The Bulwark, they're authors of this piece, they knew this, and they wrote that line anyway. Why? Because the goal of this piece isn't accuracy. The goal is to make Hassan Piker so radioactive so that the Bulwark's version of what is acceptable progressivism, which looks roughly like 2004 Joe Lieberman's centrism, it's the only option that anyone's allowed to discuss. Yes, Piker was wrong about Putin invading Ukraine. And yet he's also said that publicly, that he was wrong. But he's also anti-imperial like every other sentence, as one critic put it. Suggesting that he is pro-Putin is like saying someone who opposes the death penalty loves killers. And then the thing about calling political influencers an infestation. And I could name a bunch of great influencers. There's a ton of them out there. But I want to give you some data. Pew Research released data showing that nearly 40% of adults under 30 now prefer getting their news from content creators over any other media. 40%. Not a niche, not a fringe, nearly half of young voters. And the Bulwark solution, people who run a media company that covers politics, is to call those content creators vermin and recommend that the Democratic Party lock the door on their audience. And I'm just saying, this is the same type of strategy that the Democratic Party used with young voters in 2024. Ask how that went. Ask how our 18 to 29 turnout looked. Ask whether these people aren't serious enough worked as a coalition building message. We seem so doomed to repeat history. And yeah, the old guard, they're at it again. Chuck Schumer, his new plan to win back the Senate, it leans far away from the progressive side of the Democratic Party. And yeah, a lot of Democrats, they're not on board with it. Meanwhile, Republicans are spending $342 million in terrified defensive money. Republicans are scared. Their donors are scared. Their polling is bad. And here we are, Democrats that can't agree among ourselves on a messaging strategy, let alone who gets to be part of the conversation. You'll recall in 2016 when the DNC froze out Bernie Sanders and his coalition, literally coordinated against him. And when his voters didn't show up for Hillary with enthusiasm, the party was surprised and shocked. And it may have been more subtle in 2024, but the gatekeeping was still there. And now the Bulwark, founded by people who spent careers in Republican politics, is telling us which progressive voices are too loud and which ideas are too extreme and who doesn't get a seat at the table. Look, the Democratic tent, it's big enough to include both ex-Republican operatives who are now doing Democrat-adjacent commentary, and it's also big enough to include Hassan Piker. If it can include one, it can most certainly include the other. But if it can't include both, then we should be honest about who this tent really is for. The party that is trying to hold a coalition against genuine authoritarianism doesn't get to be choosy about who shows up to the fight. And look, I may hold opinions that some people disagree with. I'm going to have takes that land wrong. I'm going to be wrong sometimes. And that's what happens when you actually say things. The alternative is saying nothing. And if you say nothing, you lose. No gatekeeping. All of the voices. We win together or we don't win at all. And one of the best ways you can support voices like ours is anytime you see independent media that you support, take a second and hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Leave them a comment. Not just us, any of them. Because that is what keeps stories like this alive.